Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, October 20th, 2022. And our top story today, looking to brain painting for treating ADHD patients. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Dr. Marvin Andujar is with the University of South Florida. Well, Dr. Andujar, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. And it's, look, what's amazing about living in today's world is that there is amazing technology and amazing healthcare. And the blending of the two really has helped better the lives of so many people. And you're part of that. With that in mind, let's take a step back and we're going to talk about brain painting and some of the technology that you and others have developed there. But let's talk about ADHD, because this is a diagnosis that many individuals have or are being diagnosed, especially among college students. But I want to get your perspective about this.
Yes. So, of course, there's a big concentration of kids with ADHD. That's when they get many diagnosed. They cannot concentrate for a long period of time when they're performing a task, or it could be the attention aspect, or it could be the hyperactivity. But then many of those, that's still the ADHD concern. Many once they become adults and they go to college and try to get a degree, they still have that inattention issue, right? So, of course, the main way to be able to address the lack of attention is through Adderall, right? Or through different drugs out there. But now, a few years, I have seen video games, mobile applications. Some video games have been approved by the FDA here in the United States, and it's being transitioned. No, I wouldn't say transitioning, but expanding from just drug solutions to also non-drug solutions like video games, mobile applications, to help kids and even adults to become more attentive. And college students, they have to pay attention all the time. While they're in the classroom or they're at home studying for an exam, they always have to pay attention. So that's why partially why we decided to start working and helping college with ADHD.
Yeah, and let's talk about brain painting. And I want to start, and thanks for that. And let's not also acknowledge that certain drugs can have contraindications, right? They can have counter effects in certain people. So there's always, even though they've been used for a long time, they can have opposite impacts. So that's why other tools are very important. So let's talk about the brain painting. And you're you're a professor of computer science. Well in-depth knowledge about the technology. Talk a little bit about the technology. I'm thinking of, wearing something on my head a la Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
Going into the holodeck, if you watch Star Trek The Next Generation, and then being able to paint. But what is the underlying technology here that you're using for this ADHD population?
Yes, so it's what we call a brain-computer interface. Others, the buzz term nowadays is neurotechnology, and more specifically, is called an EEG cap, or pretty much EEG device. So we're reading the electrical signals from the human brain, of course, non-invasively, or wearing a cap or I would say a headset. And we take those electrical signals and then we clean them up through signal processing, and then we classify them into the specific action the person wants. So that's at least the general aspect of what we do with that data and with those signals from the brain. But for the brain painting, pretty much users, those who, let's say in this case, college students, they get to concentrate on the objects and the colors of the object that they would like it to be shown in the canvas. So, and in this case, they just concentrate on that. If we show them a square and a circle, and they want to concentrate on the circle, they concentrate on that circle. And then once the algorithm have detected that they're concentrating on the circle, then the circle starts showing up on the canvas and the desired color as well. So we believe that this method of brain painting can be beneficial for those with ADHD to improve their attention, because it requires a lot of focus for a long period of time. So let's say if I'm trying to brain paint, but then my phone rings and I go pick up my phone, and let's say just to check the text messages or even answer the call, then I become distracted, right? So especially we live in the digital age, anything can get us distracted nowadays. It could be YouTube, social media. So this aspect of brain painting is you really have to be focused. So if you get distracted, you have to start almost all over again. And we also offer the immersive aspect of brain painting. You probably have heard the term metaverse, virtual reality environment. So the idea of being inside your own painting is, okay, can we improve your attention? One, because we're pretty much taking out all the physical distraction around you. So even if your phone rings, you're still immersed in your painting. You pretty much have to take off the virtual reality headset and the EEG cap for you to be able to go and answer your phone or anything else. Besides that, being inside your own painting, will this also help you to be in a more positive mood, more positive emotion, and be able to help improve your mental health? And like you mentioned, right? So when those with ADHD take drugs, they have side effects for many of them. So, and the way that we have tailored brain painting towards helping those with AD as well is because they ask us to do it. So when I have done other demos, like brain control drone demos at different conferences, adults with ADHD will approach me at the end and ask me, where can they buy the technology? Because they have ADHD and they really don't like taking drugs for it, right? And they think that using something like this, they can train their attention at home over time. It just kept happening at different events, different locations. So that's pretty much the community themselves were the ones who said, we need this. So start working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it absolutely is amazing because it really is something, and I said it jokingly, out of Star Trek. The fact that you can read electrical signals out of someone's brain and convert that to a painting or design. But this is a technology that has also been used for ALS patients. Is that correct? So for those that are maybe unfamiliar with ALS, you lose control of your legs, your arms. I think of Stephen Hawking, who was a very famous ALS patient. But being able to tap into that creativity for those individuals who are losing their motor skills, that was really the kind of the starting point for this, I would think.
Yes, so there were some researchers in Europe that started the non-immersive brain painting project years ago for ALS patients. And again, right, so if, like you mentioned, that if you have ALS, you cannot move your arms and your legs, right? So now you lose the ability to paint. So if somebody was an artist, or even if they weren't artists, they are not able to create their painting anymore. But in the case with brain painting, they can, right? So they're able to create their own paintings with their brains. So that's why when, of course, we have so many different projects in my research lab of brain-computer interfaces. I'm also interested on using our brain data and visualizing it in artistic forms, or even using it to create art. And that's why we're like, how about if we expand brain painting to more immersive, but not just for ALS patients, but also people with ADHD. And and that's why we also started expanding it also to improve mental health, right? So college students alone are depressed and many times stressed, right? So because they have to deal with personal lives, and they also had to take many exams, and they have in a period of 4 months, which is a semester here in the States. It takes, it's a lot that happens. So can we also help them trying to keep a clear mindset so they don't drive themselves crazy?
Yeah, and by the way, I think this has applications beyond just college students, but we'll talk about that when we come back. When we come back, more with Dr. Andujar about brain painting and actually what happens to those beautiful paintings. We're going to talk about that and a lot more when we come back. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're joined this morning by Dr. Marvin Andujar of University of South Florida. Dr. Andujar, thank you so much for staying with us this morning. Really interesting topic. Really appreciate you sticking around for segment 2.
Yeah, definitely. We're having a great conversation.
Yeah, this is really cool, actually. And again, as a kid growing up in the 1970s with Star Wars, Star Trek, I remember when Darth Vader said to Princess Leia they were going to use the mind probe. This is, in a way, kind of that reality, although not for nefarious purposes. Let's talk about the creativity that comes where anybody can really be creative. We don't have to be limited. A lot of times, you mentioned social media. There are repetitive tasks that all of us have to do, but it doesn't have to stifle the creativity, right? I mean, this is a tool that actually helps people who may not always be in a position to be creative, be more creative.
Correct. So again, I have an engineering background, right? So I'm more of a computer scientist, and our creativity is different from those who are in the language arts and actually study arts. But there's still creativity there. And what brain painting also allows people to do is, in the case of myself, right, I'm not very good at painting with my hand. If you ask me to paint, pretty much create a building, I wouldn't be able to. I mean, I'd be able to come up with a building, but it's not going to be like an architect level painting. So, but when it comes to brain painting, that type of creativity restriction is gone. Right, so it's pretty much it's not there. And it's what I consider a fun way to also do brain training. Right, so we mentioned about training your attention, but also it's using your brain in a way you have never used it before. So I'm trying to be creative and combining all the different colors and all the different shapes to create an abstract painting. And then also at the same time, I'm training my brain to be more focused and be more pretty much more attentive towards the task I'm performing. And at the same time trying to be have a higher mental health. And I like the correlation that you made with Star Trek and Star Wars. Every time we do a demo with kids, I always tell them they are pretty much coming into Jedi camp and learning how to become Jedis and control things with their brains.
There you go. The force is strong with this one. Let
Right.
me ask you about competition. I know there are some planned competitions. We actually had a programmer on not too long ago using artificial intelligence to paint a painting, and he actually won an art fair in Colorado, and it created a whole tumult. Like, what is art? But let's talk about what the paintings could be used for. In a way, it's creates uses the competitive nature of humans in a way, but also gets people to focus on something. And so it kind of gives them an end result to focus on, and that focus could be being competitive with others about coming up with the best brain painting.
True. Yeah. So we can always look into competitions on how can who's the one who come up with the fastest painting, right? Again, it requires a lot of attention. So which one can concentrate for a longer period of time? Even if someone doesn't have ADHD, it still is a challenge to do that. And then, but we also have been thinking, how can we expand these paintings to as an NFT, non-fungible token? So in that case is who come up with the most interesting paintings that people will be interested to acquire for collection purposes. And it will be also an extension of what we have done in my lab before with brain racing competitions, where you're racing drums with your brains. And now this will be a painting based, where you're creating the paintings and who are able to complete that faster. And then at the end, who has the most interesting paintings, right? So it's always looking into the design but also the speed of coming up with virtual paintings. And that is pretty much also is an extension of the current art that we know.
Yeah, and you're going to turn into an art critic, or at least those around you and your team will turn into an art critic if you're starting to judge certain paintings, or maybe you'll offload that to somebody else. Last question: when you think about how far we've come in terms of technology, this is simply amazing to be able to use the currents from the brain. What does the future look like? You mentioned the metaverse. We hear so much about the metaverse from Meta, but what does the future look like just in the next 5 to 10 years for technology in this regard?
Yes, definitely when it comes to neurotechnology, I call it the golden era to pretty much work in this field, either from a startup stage or in academia as a researcher, or both. Although I have been saying that for a few years now, is the golden era, but because I have noticed since I started working on this field since the early 2000s, I have noticed the trend on how things are just evolving in this field. And we keep combining it with the other technologies, right? So we're talking about drones. How can we control drones with your brain? Then we talk about the metaverse, right? So of course the metaverse is the present and also the future. So in the next 5 years, the metaverse is going to be very, very interesting. But then how can we also combine neurotechnology with the metaverse, meaning having the virtual environment within the metaverse, the colors and change based on how the person feels. And we can do all of that by getting data from the brain. If I'm feeling sad, can the weather within the metaverse change so it can help me become happier, right? So if I like dogs and then my profile within the metaverse knows that, and then it identifies through my neurotechnology that I'm not feeling too well, that I'm probably depressed, then probably dogs start running around my virtual environment so it can make me feel more happier. So this in terms of course, we have autopilots, right, self-driving cars coming up. So we can always combine neurotechnology there, where we can detect when somebody's falling asleep and then be able to communicate with the car. So the car can start the autopilot if somebody actually falls asleep. So there are different ways that neurotechnology can definitely help in these different areas that are pretty much coming up. And lastly, of course, is always video games, right? The digital life of video games. Right, so we know about esports and that competitive aspect, and that's also something that we're working on, and I'm interested on how can we have a unique competitive brain control competitions, which we have done before, because I call it the inclusive sport, if you think about it with neurotechnology. So if someone is in a wheelchair and they would like to compete with someone who's not in a wheelchair, they can, because all it's needed is the brain, right? It's what we call the brain power. So again, somebody may have upper limb differences and they want to compete with someone who has both arms. It's still fine, because the brain's only needed, regardless of gender, ethnicity, height, weight. It doesn't matter. Your brain activity is still there, and you can train that from home. So it's the most inclusive sport by including neurotechnology. So that's where I see the technology going in the next 5 years.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the Star Trek. Just go back to the original Star Trek episode, the episode that was really the pilot, where they land on a planet and there are beings that don't communicate with their voices. They communicate with their brains. The other application that I was thinking about, because I'm getting hungry, is having, like, just thinking about having a kitchen that would cook a chicken parm. If I just said, hey, you know what, I want to create a chicken parm, and it would just do that. Maybe that's sometime in the future. I don't know, but it seems like you guys are really on a great path. Dr. Andujar, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, visit our website and all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.